Thank you,
Yeah,
dear.
so God let me keep my house.
Thank you. Sherry, nice to see you. Danielle, nice to see your name. Arella, nice to see that you made it on. Corey, nice that you made it. Martha, who's Martha? Martha, are you new?
Ariana from Kenya.
Oh, wow. Martha from Kenya. Awesome.
Yeah.
Wow,
What
welcome.
time is it now in Kenya?
We are fine.
Well,
Yeah,
it's nice
happy.
that you made it on. Awesome. Jenny, see your name. Don't see you. Mamelo, are you from the Philippines? Where are you from, Mamelo?
I'm sorry, I have my little guys running around. I'm originally from a country called Lesotho in South Africa, but I live in Chicago now.
You live in Chicago, my neighbor in Evanston. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Shara sent me this link.
Who sent it to you? Oh, Shara. Okay, awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. Wow. So you're from a little country in South Africa. You made it to Evanston, so you're Corrine's neighbor, because Corrine's from Evanston. I mean, she used to be my neighbor, but she ditched me and went to Evanston. We forgive her. We forgive her. Corrine, I don't see you, but I see a picture of you. Corrine, how are you?
Hi, yeah, I'm here tonight.
Glad you made it, and I get to see your picture. I don't get to see you, but I get to see your picture.
Yeah.
So very nice. Okay, good. This is awesome. All right, so let's get started. So what we're doing tonight is I wanted to go back to the basics, which is going back to we know within the idea of being a Noachide. What do you mean a Noachide? Noachide, we're saying, is a person that's saying, I want to live a life as God wants me to live it, which is keeping the commandments that he originally gave the primordial man Adam. He gave Adam 6. At that time, everybody was, I don't know if they were vegan, but they were definitely vegetarians. And after the great flood, in compensation for Noah and his sons sustaining and providing for all animal life, man was given permission to use animals and eat them as a means of serving God. And at that point, we added a 7th commandment that has to do with the eating of the animals. So we say, therefore, there are 7 laws for all Noachide. Noachide meaning all descendants of Noah, which happens to be everyone on the call, myself included, because every human being on this planet is a descendant of Noah. So there's the 7 Noahide laws. Of course, that's a misnomer, because that sounds like, oh, great, I'll learn them in 5 minutes. And actually, I have a little book in English of some 700 pages, which is a nice little reference for these 7 laws. So 7 laws and 700 pages, because obviously there are many, many, many subsidiary branches and lots and lots and lots of details within each one of these things that God is saying, I made you, I want you to connect to me and serve me, and I want to be close with you, and this is how. And as you keep these laws, this is your way of becoming one with me, which is a beautiful gift that God gives us. Imagine, here's God in all of his infinity, and here's finite me. And God says, yeah, you're a speck of dust, but I love you, and I want you and me to be one. And here's how. That's actually in the Hebrew, the word for commandment is a mitzvah. And the etymology of mitzvah is the word tzafsa, which means a bond. So a commandment implies like, hey, I'm the boss, this is what you got to do. But if we look into the word itself, a bond, God's saying, this is how the two of us become one. This is how we fuse. I'm infinite and you're finite. So your own man-made roads of finite can only create finite. But if you're taking it from me, from my end, from the infinity of God, telling you what is the road to become one with me, this is how you and me become one. So we discussed in the past weeks, today we're not going to do Maimonides, but in the past weeks we were studying in the Maimonides itself, in the original, his explanation of the Noachide laws, and he makes a very beautiful discrimination that I'm going to mention. I know some people in this class know this, but some people don't. It's always worth repeating. Maimonides says there's 2 types of Noachides. there's a Noahide, meaning someone who's taking upon himself to serve God and keep these commandments out of called coercion. A Noahide because he wants to live in Israel, and in the times when the Jews controlled Israel as a religious country, the only way a non-Jew was allowed to live in Israel was if he kept the laws, and if he broke the laws, he was killed. So therefore, you want to live in Israel, you love the climate, you love the people, you got great fishing or great beaches. So you're saying, fine, I can keep these laws. Great. You're a Noahide. In the times of the temple, you were what's called a ger toshav. That was the technical term for it. You accepted upon yourself to live in Israel and keep these laws because that's what's convenient for you. But then there's another type of Noahide. That's the type on the class tonight. That's a Noahide who has no coercion, no compulsion. There's nothing today that's coercing anyone to do this. And yet, there's a desire of being close to God. There's a desire of wanting to serve Him, be one with Him, and be authentic. And such a person, Maimonides calls Chasidei Umos Ha'olam, a term which translates as the righteous of the nations of the world, which is sometimes loosely called a righteous Gentile. But that is a person that Maimonides says, from love of God, turns to serve Him, and therefore to keep His laws. And such a person, Maimonides says, has a share in the world to come. Because every commandment done with such pure intent that I believe in God, I want a relationship with Him, the energy of the commandment fuses with the energy of your soul. And since the commandment is eternal, this gives eternal energy to the soul. And therefore, commandment by commandment, the soul is empowered and infused with an energy that will last forever and will shine and give this person a portion in the world to come. So therefore, it's a beautiful journey you're on. It's not always an easy journey, but it's a very beautiful journey to have such a close relationship with God. And what we're going to do today is go back to basics, because we're going to talk about the first of the 7 laws, which is the rejection of idolatry. And of course, that's very fundamental. That is the most fundamental principle. And it's very insidious, and there's lots of different colors and flavors to the word idolatry. And we're going to discuss today some of the laws. There are many. We're only going to be touching on a few. But some of the laws that have to do with idolatry, and I'm of course, there are many that I don't believe are so relevant, though it may be in some countries they would be. I don't know what's happening in Kenya. But I'm going to be honing more on what most Americans might encounter. But Martha, any questions, feel free. And we'll discuss it. Again, for some people this is very known, and for some people this might be not known, these ideas. So there are chapters and chapters and chapters on the origin of idolatry. Just not exaggerating, I could count. Yeah, we have 12 chapters on idolatry. My goal for tonight was to touch on a few of the ideas in 3. We'll see what happens. And please feel free to question. You could either unmute yourself and question, or you could chat. You could just write a question, or if it's a private question that you'd like answered on the chat, instead of just doing the default, which is everyone, you could sort of press down to get all the names, and you could just hit my name. And then I see the question, I would respond to it, but it's private. Okay. So we're going to discuss this chapter. We're going to be focusing on the prohibition of turning to idol worship. And there are many, many texts, there are many books done, created by people that are promulgating this idolatry and all of its religion and all of its details. And basically the bottom line is, it's forbidden to read any of that. It's forbidden to study idolatry, because that's already getting us too close to where we don't want to be. So anything that's describing the service, and each sect writes the essence of their service, the practices, the statutes, it's forbidden to read them, it's forbidden to think about them, it's forbidden to have anything to do with any of them, except for very specific purposes that I'll delineate. So that's why if you're talking to someone, it's not like, oh, this is cool. Let's do a comparative religion analysis. Tell me. Let me hear some things. Let me ask you some questions. Don't go there. Even if you're trying to get the person to understand that what they're doing is false, it's still a very dangerous road. Because there's such an energy to idolatry. It has such a power that we want to put a large distance between ourselves and anything that has anything to do with idolatry. We're not supposed to, it's actually forbidden, to listen to the music of idol worship, to smell the aroma of the idols, the incense, to look at the decorations. You know, they can make them gorgeous, right? The tremendous, tremendous energy is put to make them so beautiful and to pour whatever the riches of that area is into their idols. All of that's absolutely for benefit. Why? Because if you're enjoying the incense, if you're enjoying the music, if you're enjoying the artwork, you're benefiting from idolatry. Well, I don't believe any of it. I just think it's culturally cool. Or it's just art. It's just music. No. Everything has a power. So the music of idolatry, even if the person singing it is not a believer, goes back to the roots of the idolatry. The art of the idolatry, the incense of the idolatry, it all is feeding off that core energy of idolatry. And therefore, it's forbidden to benefit in any way from idol worship. Now, obviously, like if you're driving and you're passing by a place, it's not like you're not allowed to walk that road. Because that's not why you're walking the road. You're walking the road because you're walking the road. So just don't look. Don't pay attention. Don't smell. Don't listen. Distract yourself. You're allowed to keep walking that road. But you're not allowed to go to any place to directly try or enjoy having benefit from any of these things. Which, of course, in a very practical way would mean you're not allowed to enter a place of such worship, which sometimes becomes a little bit of a sticky situation, as we'll discuss in more detail. But the general rule, before we get to any of the details, is it's forbidden to enter a house of idol worship. Sometimes there's exceptional circumstances, we'll discuss some. Sometimes there's personal need if you're going not into the place of the area of worship, we'll discuss them. But the general rule is you're not allowed to go in. And this is just because, again, when anything has a danger, we try to distance ourselves as much as possible. Just as similarly in Judaism, there could be a biblical law, and the rabbis could add like 500 laws around it, which we view as fences. Each law is like another fence protecting you, protecting you, protecting you. So even if for some reason you're really spaced out or in a really bad mood, and you start smashing the fences, you'd have to smash like 500 fences to get to the law itself. Now, you're still not supposed to break any of those fences, but it's a different concept. So similarly, all of these ways that we're guarding ourselves, not benefiting from idolatry, not going to a house of worship, not even gazing and just appreciating the beauty, is like fence, 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 to keep us very far from that core evil of idolatry itself. Now, again, sometimes there are reasons where it's permissible. If a person has to go there for a business, to learn a craft, if a technical reason, which is very clearly, I'll call it business oriented, then that gives you permission. In other words, let's say someone, I don't know, could be creative, but he's an artisan and he wants to study how they do these sculptures to help his own ability to craft things, he'd be allowed to look at it because he's looking at it with a very technical eye for the purpose of improving his skill. Something like that is permissible, though you want to do it cautiously, but just for personal enjoyment, it's absolutely forbidden. So what happens if you have a wedding taking place in a house of idol worship? What do you do? So in general, you don't go. It's a general rule. You don't go. Not even actually if it wasn't in a house of idol worship, but let's say the priests in some other random hall are conducting the ceremony, you also don't go. which I know is sometimes very sticky and sometimes very difficult and sometimes painful. But you don't go because that's, again, acknowledging, giving recognition, giving praise to idolatry. On the other hand, nowadays, if the gathering is completely secular, nothing religious at all, no belief in any God at all, they're not going to the sanctuary. They're going to the social hall. They're using it because it's a convenient social hall. It's in the neighborhood. It holds their people. The price is right. They have no relationships to the service at all. It is purely for the hall. There's no service at all. There's no mention of service at all. You know, these people don't know anything about this religion and couldn't care less about the religion. Then you are allowed to go because it's no different than going to any other hall. You're not going into the sanctuary, and there's not going to be any worship happening in the marriage ceremony. But if there is, it's a problem. That's the general rule. So the general rule is don't go. The secondary clause to that is if you're going to the social hall and there's nothing religious going on, they're just renting it as a room, and you know there's not going to be anything religious going on, even if maybe some priests will be there. But they're just as guests, like you're a guest. It's fine, you can go. The third clause, or the third point is, but what if it's going to be a wedding, and it's going to be some idol worship, and there's going to be a religious ceremony, and they're going to be really, really mad at you if you don't show up. There's going to be a lot of anger. God forbid there might be hatred. There'll be a lot of bad feelings. Maybe, for example, if it's a sibling, what are you doing to destroy the family? You know, something like that. All the family showing up. You're just not showing up because you're so strange and weird and different. And you're creating dissension in the family. Then you can go because the damage to the family would be very, very great, and we value family as well. So even though in general you can't, but in that very specific type of situation, you would be allowed to. But that's the general rule. If your family's be really mad at you and really hurt, you'd be allowed to go, even though in general you're not allowed to go, but in that situation you'd be allowed to go. But that only applies if it's like what I call normative America. Again, I don't know what's like in Kenya, but in America, most religious people aren't that religious. So a wedding is not going to be so religiously oriented, but there will be some of it. But if you know these people are really, really, really religious in their worship, and there's going to be a lot of focus on the religion throughout the wedding, in each part of the celebration, they're going to praise God, their God, and be involving themselves with their worship, then you can't, even if they're going to be really mad at you. I can say from my personal experience, because I know this is sort of a sensitive point, and a lot of people, I'm sure, that are on this call have struggled with family and pain with that. So obviously it's not the same, but I know for myself, it just coming to my mind because last night I have to be mentioning it too. I happened to have some family here for the weekend. So there was two weddings. I have cousins. I'm very close to their mom, aunt of mine. They live close to me. I mean, for those people that know Chicago, I'm in the city, in the northern end of the city. They're in Arlington Heights, or further in Des Plaines. They're not far at all, maybe an hour drive. I'm very close to them. And I couldn't go to either of the two weddings of their children for religious reasons. I'm not getting into the details, but for various religious reasons, I couldn't go. And my aunt was furious with me both times. And you know what happened? She got over it. So I'm just sharing that because she was very hurt. We're very close, speak to her all the time. She, of course, came to my wedding and all my siblings' weddings. I'm very religious. They're not. And because of some of the details of the weddings, I couldn't attend either wedding. And she knew it was because of religion. And she was really, 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 really hurt and really upset at me. And I remember what happened with the first one. And I don't remember how many months, probably quite a number, but she got over it. And it happened more recently with the second one. And she was very hurt. And it took a while, and she got over it. So I'm just sharing with you my personal experience that sometimes, you know, your family will get upset with you. I've been there, done it. And we just say, okay, listen, I want to serve God. I want to be authentic. I want to be true to what he demands from me. Sometimes there's a big price. Sometimes there's a very big price we pay. I think for every Noachide, it's an incredible testimony to your relationship for God. I'm sure for all of you, there's a price. But even when there's that price tag, just know if the relationship is real and good between you and your family, give them time. They'll get over it. And every time we sacrifice, this is something very, very, very precious to God. I'm not looking for painful things. I'm looking for anyone here to have to go through hard things. But I could say, as having been going this road for many, 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 many years, that sometimes, you know, God does create situations that cost us things. And I think every time there's a cost, it's because God knows that we're at that point that we're ready to come closer to his service. And as such, he creates a situation that compels us to go deeper and therefore become much closer. Any questions, by the way? Feel free to ask if anyone has any questions on any of this. Okay, take it that was supremely clear.
Actually, do you mind, can you identify idolatry? Like, what is the actual definition of it, and how do you identify it?
Idolatry would mean any service in which there's a belief in any other power of God besides God himself. So it could be anything and everything that would be saying there's any force that has any power besides the one absolute, non-visible, and supreme power of God himself. Like, to contrast the point, just to make it clear, let's say the Islamic religion. Is the Islamic religion idolatrous? Not at all. There's nothing idolatrous in the Islamic religion. It's forbidden for a different reason, because you can't have man-made religions, but it's not idolatrous. So any of the laws of idolatry have nothing to do with it. There's nothing idolatrous there. There's no belief in any force of God besides God himself. But in any other thing out there in the world, I mean, or the high majority, there's some concept of some power besides God himself. And once we're going in the direction of anything else having a God power, exclusive of God, that's what we're calling idolatrous. So therefore, there's a lot of idolatry in the world. In different areas of the world, it's more obviously pagan than others. But we don't necessarily see in Chicago little statues and that type of service. But yeah, unfortunately, the bulk of mankind that worships some form of idolatry. And sometimes it's insidious because you think, well, I didn't think there was idolatry. But if you actually start delving into the belief system, you find even in things that sound on the surface not so idolatrous, but if you actually start questioning and researching, there's a lot of idolatrous beliefs. And because this is the fact, you know, just when we think of it in terms of the Noachide laws and in terms of the Ten Commandments, right? Comes to the Ten Commandments, which is a Jewish concept. I mean, not only, I mean, obviously it's a universal concept, but I'm saying, what's the first thing God's telling us when he's talking to mankind? I'm God, don't serve idols. That's his A1 thing to tell us. And in the Noachide laws, it's the first of the Noachide laws, don't serve idols. The fact that it's there, place number one, on the most simple level, you don't have to be too deep and introspective here, means, wow, it's a really big desire, need, passion of man, because God's saying, dead center, this is the first thing I want you to uproot. If you want me, this is what you have to give up. And whatever God's asking of us, he knows exactly our pressure points. You know, whatever he's commanding or forbidding means, do we have a desire in that direction? Yeah, we do. Some of the things would be like, no, I don't have any desire in that direction. Okay, maybe you're so refined, you're not aware of those baser parts of self. But you have these desires because that's why God's talking to you about it. both in terms of what to do and what not to do. So if we're seeing this first one is the essence concept of accepting God and rejecting anything but God, mankind by definition has a strong desire to set up idols. Now, this could also be very subtle. If I want to raise this like a million miles higher, I could also struggle with a very refined form of idolatry, which in my arena would be not giving credence to man having any power over my life. Like if I would think, well, I better make sure my boss likes me because they're firing a lot of people. You know, the new way to they have this great new plan of how they increase revenue and save money. They just cut half their staff and then just give everyone else double work. Well, I better make sure my boss likes me because I can't I can't handle being cut right now with today's economy. My boss, he's gonna be the one that determines if I keep or lose my job. There's a God. If God wants me to keep the job, I'm keeping it, no matter if the guy likes me or doesn't. And if God doesn't want me to keep the job, I'm gonna lose the job, no matter if the boss likes me or doesn't. So that's a very, very, very subtle level of giving power to something besides God, of believing in something besides God. So it comes to the most base pagan worship, and then more subtle, and then it could even get on the level of a person who is an absolute believer in God. They could find themselves believing in man. If I'm friends with so-and-so, this is gonna be a really great connection, help me. If so-and-so doesn't like me, I'm gonna get in trouble. This connection is gonna help me get ahead. You know, like all these things we tell ourselves. That's giving credence to something besides God. Very subtle, but we all have inside ourselves that base nature to give power to something besides God. And therefore, we're told that's the first essential thing we need to do, is uproot everything and know it's all God, it's only God, there is only God, there is no other power but God, and we have the merit to know this and be able to serve him, which is a tremendous gift that God has given us. Because I don't know how many Noachites there are in the world today. I know we've tried to figure out this number, but there's 8 billion people out there. And the high majority don't have this gift of knowledge. There's no more precious gift than knowledge. And they don't have the knowledge. So God selected you to be able to serve him. Any other questions? Okay.
Yes, I would like to ask, there's a situation where you get the husband is a Noahide, and sometimes the wife is in Christianity, and sometimes she's a reader there. And you find the children, they are divided. They don't know where to follow, whether Noahidism or the Christianity. What would you advise? Or the other way, the husband is a Noahide, or the wife is a Noahide and the husband is a Christian. And sometimes they are readers in their churches. What would you advise the couple?
It's a very, very hard thing. And I'm saying in Judaism, there is that parallel of you know, the religious and non-religious spouse. There it becomes even much more complex because of a lot of laws that would regulate the marriage and everything. So it gets very complex. It's God very much believes in marriage. And if it's a good marriage and a good family, God wants marriage, God wants family. That's part of God, how God wants this world to be. If one is very devout in those beliefs, and the spouse is very devoutly trying to serve God, and the children are, of course, very confused, the only thing you can do in any situation like that is be respectful, authentic, strong in your convictions, in a very pleasant, positive way. Light attracts and darkness repels. So you want to keep giving light. You don't want to make it, of course, this totally depends on the age and stage of the children. So I'm just saying this generically. Obviously, at different ages, it would translate differently. And I'm sure there are people on this call that have had experiences with their children, and maybe they could feel free to share. you're suggesting a situation of a divided couple, but let's even take it of a couple that suddenly both realize the truth and their kids are like 15, 17, 12, you know, and where they're like, whoa, what are you saying? You know, so you could have also that situation. So I think in general, our belief is truth and light are very attractive, and we believe in them. And we believe that if words come from the heart and they're true, they penetrate the heart. So we keep giving true, sincere words with a lot of love, a lot of respect. And I think the best advertisement for anything is when people see how you're such a better person because of this. I don't know if anyone here has had that experience. You can let me know if you have. But if someone sees that, oh, you used to be so impatient. What happened? Or, wow, you're so much more giving. You're so much more generous. You're so much more loving. What happened? Well, you know, as I'm closer and closer to God, you know, I've been working on myself and trying to open up more and more spaces of myself to be full of God and how he wants me to live. In other words, the more I see that your connection to God is positive, is attractive, is beautiful, the more on my almost animal level, I'm opened up to say, wow, there's something true here. There's something good here. There's something that this is right, because look how she's changing and becoming a much better person by this process. So I think personally working on self, at really that the light of God should shine through the body of man, that's really obviously the goal. For each one of us, the goal is that as we become closer and closer to God, God's energy shines through us. There's a beautiful metaphor that I didn't make up. It's actually from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. It's a beautiful metaphor for this concept. And he speaks of a silversmith who has like raw silver. And he wants to purify it and burn and take out the alloys to make it pure silver. So what he does is he puts it on the fire and stirs it, and the heat burns out the impurities. But you have to be very careful, because if it gets too hot, it's going to burn and ruin the silver. But if it's not hot enough, it's not going to burn out the impurities. So the silversmith is stirring and heating and stirring and heating his cauldron, and he keeps looking at it until he sees, when are all the impurities burnt out? When he looks in the silver and sees his face reflected, that the silver has become a pure mirror for the face of the silversmith. So that's a beautiful metaphor. God as the silversmith and us as the silver. And as God's putting us through the fires very carefully, not too hot, he doesn't want to destroy us, but not too low. It's not going to get us to burn out our impurities. And as it's continuing the process, what happens is, as the impurities are burnt out, the face of God is reflected in man. God's energy shines through us. And when you look at a really godly person, you feel it. You feel it. You feel a power there, a beauty there. So those would be my two answers. Meaning, on one hand, as we work on ourself more and more and more, that's the greatest advertisement. That's a crass word for it, but it's the greatest advertisement for the truth. And as we're treating our children respectfully, with love, with patience, just because you found the truth, that doesn't mean they did. With patience, and keep talking about it, keep talking about it, keep talking about it. Not necessarily trying to preach to them. You could be talking about your experiences, talking about your friend, talking about your neighbor, but keep talking about it, keep talking about it, keep talking about it. Kids listen the most when we're not talking to them. So keep talking about it, keep talking about it, keep talking about it. And true words that come from your heart will penetrate. Would anyone like to share their experiences with their children in that question, if they have something that would be worthwhile sharing? I definitely know a number of people here have children, and they've probably gone through something. Does anyone want to share? It's so often helpful to hear someone else's experiences.
Yeah, I would say, you know, Hashem is faithful, and time will tell and come out, and they end up seeing what is true and what's not true, for sure. Thank God. You know what I mean? Basically, what is the actions of the other person with their religion versus your actions with your religion, you know.
Carrie,
a
how
lot.
old were your kids when you started this journey?
Oh goodness, when I left Christianity, they were a baby and like 2 and 5. And now they're 28, 26, and 19. Yeah.
So you just
So,
have to have a lot of patience.
yeah. I mean, it is true, you know, definitely truth will prevail. Yeah, but you have to understand they have their own path, just like everybody else in the world has their own path, and it will only happen when it's time, you know, up to Hashem. So,
I think
yeah.
that's true for all of us. I say the same thing about my
Mhm.
kids. So
Yeah. Yeah.
you pray,
Yeah. Lots of prayer.
lots of prayers, lots of psalms, lots of charity, lots of
Yeah.
trust and belief in them, lots of love, and lots of patience. That would definitely be for me the right recipe. Anyone else would like to share on that question? What experience of someone with like either a children where one parent is giving one message, the other parent is giving a different message, or I said I think it's also true where children are not born into it, but you're coming to it and suddenly they're supposed to jump aboard, or even if they are born into it, but as they get older, I mean, they live in a world that's giving them very different messages. So I would think in all of the above situations. Corey, you gonna share something?
Yeah. I would say just, you know, being open and honest with your kids through the whole process, because it is a process. When we came, my son was probably 6 when he came out of Christianity, the older one, and has been through the whole Messianic movement, the Noahides, and now conversion. And it's just a process. And, you know, being able to be open and talk about it and realize that, you know, we're still learning. We're all learning. And so being able to communicate and let them ask questions and know that, you know, that we love them no matter what, whatever decision that they make. But, you know, we're there to just guide them, not force them into whatever it is that we're choosing to do.
That's a good point. That goes to respect. Respect and space and love and patience and truth. Anyone else want to share on that one? I know a lot of people have been through the experience. I know it's very sometimes personal and sometimes a lot of emotion.
I think Jenilyn or Gwendolyn, however you pronounce it, I think she wants to.
Okay, yeah, yes. Me and the father of my son, he's Christian, and, you know, now I'm, you know, I left Christianity 7 months ago, thanks to COVID. And 2 weeks ago, I started in this group. And yeah, it's so hard, you know, because for me, I'm teaching my son, you know, the 7th Noachide. I'm starting to read him and he's asking about Jesus and the thing. And, you know, I have to tell him what's the truth and, you know, just leave it to God's hand. You know, I'm trying to be a good example for him, teaching him, you know, to give, you know, to charity in his very young age, because, you know, he's doing some, you know, acting. He's in acting industry. And I just wish that, you know, one day that, you know, God will put him in the right path. That's the only thing I can do, because I cannot force him to do things, but I'm trying so hard while he was so young. I'm trying so hard to teach him what I've been learning, you know, from here.
How old is he, Jenny? How old is he?
He's 11 years old.
11. Okay, you got some time. You've
Yeah,
been
and
for 7 months. Give him a few years, but you've got time. There's still time when he's really in your home, seeing you, seeing your growth, seeing you're maybe more calm, more centered, more trusting, more positive, and yeah, seeing truth. I think truth resonates. You know, there's a saying of the first leader of the Chabad movement, who's called colloquially the Alter Rebbe, or in the Hebrew, Admor HaZaken. And he said, this is a statement of his, I'll say it in the Hebrew, Hama'orhu Behiskalus, the essence of God is revealed, and therefore even the smallest children know that there is the God that is, which is saying every human being on this planet has, in the essence, depth of their core, an awareness of God, because God is revealed in his essence on planet Earth. God that is. So when we get past all the window dressing and we get to our core, there is a natural belief in God. And therefore, anything we're doing that's expressing that belief just causes that core belief to resonate inside the other person. It's like there's this intense light, but it's very, very buried in our soul. And when they're in contact with someone who's serving God in a truthful way, it's like a little magnet pulling out this deeply buried light. So you got a number of years left where he'll still be in your presence. So you'll have lots of opportunities to try to pull out that light that's inside him, because it's inside every single human being. That's why in every language and in every culture, there's a concept of God. It might be a very deviant concept of God, but there's a concept of God, because that's part of our experience, because God is revealed. God's energy in essence is on planet Earth. Okay, so we can continue unless does anyone else have anything to share to answer Martha, because I know it's a very deep issue. And I know a lot of people have gone through it. If there's anything else they'd like to share on that. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful and you'll process, and I'm sure you'll share with us in the future your experiences. Okay, so we were saying, I just want to review the laws because this is very practical. We're talking about, first we were saying in general, forbidden idolatry, of course. Forbidden to read and study of idolatry, we get that. Forbidden to benefit from idolatry, we get that, which means don't enjoy their art and don't enjoy their music and don't enjoy their perfumes and their incense. They're the structures, the architect. Now we're saying, we're going specifically to the celebrations, like those life cycle events taking place in a place of worship, a place of idolatry worship. We're saying in general, don't go. If it's a place that's only being used not in the worship area, but in the what we call the social room, and only being used as a secular place, that you have a room, so you can go. You're not going to go into the house of worship to enter the social hall. You're going to the basement, you're going to the social hall. There's nothing at all religious going on in the ceremony. Purely secular, no problem. Well, it is religious, but it's like a sibling, and there'd be a lot of hurt feelings if you don't go. You can go so to not create such a rift in the family. Except if it's a very, very devout people, and every step of the way there's going to be service throughout the ceremony. There'll be a lot of drenched services. You cannot go, even though there's going to be hard feelings, because there's a lot of prohibitions here of benefiting, of especially we don't want anything that has to do with eating or drinking, especially alcohol, from anything that has to do with any idolatrous connection. That would be very, very, very taboo. By the same token, of course, it would be forbidden to participate in any celebration which would be initiating a child or any person into the service of their beliefs. Now you could say, well, a lot of people, I mean in America for sure, that have any of these initiation rites, it's just, cultural. They don't really believe themselves. Look at how they live. It's cultural, which is probably true, but it's still absolutely forbidden. So even things, I mean, again, I'm saying, I don't know in Kenya, but I'm saying in America, there's a lot of things that are just cultural. But the roots of that culture is this energy of the idol, the energy of this denial of God. And that's such a strong evil energy. We don't want to go anywhere near it. Like I can say for myself, My youngest is special needs, and as such, he's in a public school. And I'm very, very sensitive to this issue because, of course, it comes up all the time. And I had, there was a point where I was every day taking him because I was like taking him for therapy. And then I walked into the school building like 4 out of 5 days a week, just bring him in after therapy. And like I once walked by the music in this building, the music is like in the hall. They don't have a classroom for it. And I'm listening to, it's December time, and I'm listening to the music, and I'm like, my kid's not going to be in that class. I remember I went to my car, and I didn't want to get spaced out and forget, because, you know, I could have a tendency to do that, just having too much on my plate, like all of us. And I right then wrote an email on my phone to the teacher, like, I just passed the music room, what they were singing, that music, if that's the music going on, this wasn't my son's class. When my son's class is there, he is not allowed to attend music class, you know, deal with it. And they very respectfully dealt with it because I'm not going to do that. I've had countless things like that. They were like, what was it? I don't remember. I'm spacing out with St. Patrick's Day. So you think, oh, yeah, this means like go find like a clover or something. But of course you can see by the name itself, but I still wasn't sure. And the teacher very politely emailed me before, can he participate in like a clover hunt? And I did some research, and then I actually called a rabbi, and he said, well, what are the roots of it? I'm like, I got no clue. I mean, Google, you know, thank you for Dr. Google. He's a great source of information. And I found out a lot about it, probably more than most people in America know about it. And I said, no, absolutely not. And they worked around it. I had this year now with Halloween, where now everything is virtual, so I really see what's going on. And the first day of like the week before Halloween, I'm like, you know, email the teacher, no. So she's like, all right, well, yeah, the books of this week. So we worked out that every time she was reading the story, I would get offline, which I did. It wasn't such a bad thing. So I get offline, and then I come back, and then the song after that also, of course, is Halloween. So I stayed a little bit longer offline. But then I see over the course of the day, like everything is Halloween oriented. So I asked for a meeting with the teacher. I said, listen, I'm seeing this because I'm online now. Is this what happens in December? Is this what happens in April? Like, I just have to take my kid out of school for a few weeks at a time. So her answer was, no. Those we view as religious holidays, we don't really touch them. But Halloween's not religious. So therefore, we just view it as like cultural. So I'm like, well, Halloween really is religious. It has, you know, very, very strong pagan roots that are very, very idolatrous. Okay, I'll know for next year. So you have to sort of be proactive, looking. I'm saying, let's say my situation with my child in public school, but it's there, and I'm very sensitive to it because I know the power is very strong. So even in its most benign window dressing, which is definitely very benign and very non-religious, it's still connecting to that power. It's a very strong power. All books will be forbidden to be read if, again, as we said, it's any books that have anything to do with idolatry, not only forbidden, but actually if you have them, you're really supposed to destroy them, to remove anything that would be evoking a memory even of heresy and idol worship. Why aren't we allowed to read these books? Why aren't we allowed to own them? Because there's a commandment that says, do not turn to idols. Meaning we can't even turn in the direction to like contemplate how they serve. That would already be forbidden. The only time though you are allowed to learn it would be to know what to keep away from. So if you're studying it to understand its parameters, so you know what's forbidden for you to have an association with, you are allowed to do it. Especially if we're trying to teach others, like to be wary of a false prophet, a magician, someone who's claiming lots of power. So if you learn enough to be able to refute, and that's your purpose in learning, then you'd be allowed to. Now, when we're learning, it's prohibited to learn anything from these believers attached to idol worship, if they're proselytizing to serve the idol, because this brings us to heresy. even what I said before, you could learn to know what not to do or learn to refute, does not mean learn from a devout believer. It means like learning from a book, learning from Google, learning from a factual source of information, but not learning from a devout believer in the subject, because again, it's going to get too close for comfort. Can you debate? This might come up because you might find yourself drawn into debates or wanting to debate. This might be a very practical question. Can you debate these subjects? Can you debate these matters of faith with believers, with apostates? Can you debate? No, we do not debate. We do not debate. Sometimes you might find some big rabbis that debate, and it has to be done very, very, very carefully. In general, and this is a general principle that is not only about this, but about a lot of things in life, we have a rule. One who fights with someone who's dirty gets dirty. Meaning you could apply the same rule in terms of, in the Hebrew say, hamasavek imenavel misnavel. So if somebody was just sort of an abusive person, nothing to do with idolatry, but just in general, we don't engage in them. Because if you engage with someone who's in negative space, the negativity touches you. We don't go there. If someone sends you a text or a WhatsApp with some like really nasty comment, we don't respond. We're not going to defend ourselves, or obviously we're not going to respond nastily to that. We're not going to defend ourselves. Because once you start engaging with someone who's dirty on any level, in any situation, the dirt clings. We rise above, we spread light, we don't go down into the darkness. You know, sometimes there are some people that's their job and that's their mission in life, and they have very specialized powers to do it. I'm talking about for all the rest of us. So therefore, it's forbidden to engage in debates on matters of faith. Sometimes people try to draw you into it. So I could say for myself, and this happens, you know, with me as well in lots of different things, I always have to clarify in my head, is this a debate? Or, this is how I phrase it to myself, is a person sincerely interested? Is there sincerity of desire to know? If a person sincerely wants the knowledge, I'm not going to say, well, I'm not allowed to talk to you. Of course I'm not allowed to talk to you. That's not a debate. If you're asking a question to prove me wrong, or to pierce me, or to make fun of me, that's the place I don't go to. If you're asking the question because you have a desire to know the knowledge, so that's not a debate. Even if my answer will evoke 5 other questions, and every answer I give is going to evoke 5 more questions, it's still not a debate. Because you have a desire to know. You want to know, and you have a lot of questions, and therefore you're asking questions. That's okay. That's not a debate. But the debate concept is when the person is trying to prove his supremacy and his belief supremacy over yours. That's like the best way I can define for you what it means, a debate. And if that's the headspace of the person, don't go there. And they might sometimes try to draw you in. Don't go there. But I have so much truth to say. I'm so educated now. I have so many things to prove them wrong and prove me right. It doesn't make a difference. There's an interesting line of the Lubavitcher Rebbe I once saw where he says that if you debate with someone, you always lose for 1 of 2 reasons. If they won, so to speak, and you lost, you look stupid and they look smart. So you lost. And if you won, you know, you came out looking smart. They came out looking foolish. You also lost because they're just upset at you because you won. Because they weren't looking for truth. They were looking to win. So you don't gain anything by winning a debate. You know, in medieval times, there were times when like the Jews were forced to debate. And it was a very dangerous thing because it was like we lost no matter what. Obviously, we couldn't lose the debate. But if we won the debate, we were in big, big, big trouble. So debates in general, and I'm just saying this because I do believe this is practical. I do believe this comes up. I do believe there are people out there that just want to suck you into the debate. They're forbidden and they're not healthy. And even sometimes you want to debate because you just know you're right. You have so much information. Don't go there. If the person's looking to debate, don't go there. If the person's looking for truth or looking for information, then you can't go there. I don't know if anyone has had a positive experience in those types of conversations. And sometimes, of course, there are positive experiences. but you do always have to be careful and ask yourself, this is the screening. Does the person want to know? Is the person trying to show the supremacy of his beliefs over mine? So again, we don't debate. You might use the term argue. We don't argue. You know, whatever the term you're going to use is, we don't do it. And it's also prohibited to be too closely bound up to such people, because again, it influences, which is hard, is difficult, something each person has to figure out for themselves. What does that mean in their life? Thank you. Oh, thank you. Showing me also the time. I didn't realize how late it was. So I'm gonna end on this point. But am I close to the end of the chapter? I'll end on this point. Thank you for making me realize how late it was. But like a lot of times when we're close friends, we just inevitably get bound up with them, with their social scenes, with their parties that they invite us to and we can't attend, or we sort of attend even though we know we shouldn't. And just the fraternizing is just not healthy for us. It really isn't. And again, that's a long road, and that's a hard road. And I do believe that's part of the self-sacrifice of a Noahide, is sometimes the loneliness, which is why I feel this class and such classes like this is so beautiful. For you know there are other people out there. You should have some support for your road, because it's sometimes a very lonely road. But it's just not healthy. It just leads us in places that are just create more and more difficulties in our own service, which ultimately we want to be the overwhelming beacon in our life, and not something that we're constantly playing with because of all these other pulls on us. So any questions or any comments? Anything anybody like to share at this point? Because I didn't realize how late it was. I will stop now. Okay, thank you so much for joining. So to be continued next week. I really appreciate it. And everyone should just really see as they walk their road, more and more and more, the most beautiful is seeing as you feeling God in your life, and just seeing his like smile, seeing his presence, seeing him in the little and in sometimes the very big, but sometimes even in the very little. And it's just another affirmation that he's so happy with the road you're walking. Thank you so much for joining. Have a wonderful week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Amen.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Shabbat Tov.
Shavua Tov.